So I'm getting ready to record this podcast, and I had just actually recorded an interview podcast that you are going to be hearing likely this Friday. And it was a long one. So after I'm like, oh, what am I going to talk about on the podcast now? I just didn't have any ideas floating around that much. And this is why I also love this form that you can fill out and put a question in if you want me to answer a question for you on the podcast. Because I was like, oh, I remember I saw one come through the other day. So thank you, Rachel, for inspiring today's podcast episode because we are going to be answering your question. So if you didn't know, I'll put the link in the show notes. I have a form that you can fill out. It's just like one question, just what do you want to talk about on the podcast? But it's long form, so you could put a bunch of details in there, which I love that Rachel did that because it helps me actually better answer the question, the more context that I have. So if you want me to answer a question for you on the podcast or a specific topic that we haven't covered, definitely put it in, put it in there and I will get to it on the show. And especially for the days where I'm like, I don't know what I want to talk about today, but I have to get a podcast recording in. It really helps me out. Okay. So thank you in advance. All right. So speaking of helping me out, if you're in the mood and you want to rate and review the show, I would be forever grateful for you rating and reviewing it. It means the world to me. It really helps podcasters get the podcast out to more people and get it recommended when people are searching different things. So if you haven't yet left a rating and or review, it would mean the world to me. And it could be literally one sentence. Okay. Obviously only if you like the show. If you don't like it, just keep it to yourself or go to another podcast. Okay. Okay. Anyway. All right. Rachel, let's get your question. So she asked, by the way, I'm on the walking pad. If you can't tell, I'm probably gonna have to slow down in a minute because I'm at 3.1 and I'm also talking really fast. I get out of breath, but I was just sitting for over an hour interviewing. So I'm like, I got to get these steps in. Okay. So Rachel, what causes secondary infertility and how to naturally fix it? Context. I'm 34 with 2 healthy vaginal births, 2 years postpartum most recent, and struggling with 7 to 10 days of spotting before periods and recent miscarriage. No issues prior to children, would only spot 1 to 3 days. Okay. So first and foremost, Rachel, I'm so sorry to hear about your recent miscarriage. I'm sending you so much love. I haven't personally experienced this, so I could never say that I know what that feels like, but obviously I know how emotionally, physically draining it is. So I'm just sending you a huge virtual hug and just know you're not alone. There's so many women who experience that, and hopefully you have a support system to help you. So I'm just sending you so much love for that, first and foremost. Now, for your issues with fertility, secondary infertility, right? You already know if you listen to this podcast, I do not like the term infertility because it makes it feel like it's like a death sentence and you're infertile, which there's a very small percentage of people in the population that are actually infertile. We're just having secondary fertility issues. Okay. So I feel like the language we use is really powerful and important because it will shift our mindset. Like infertility just feels very like there's no changing it. And there definitely is. Okay. Secondary fertility struggles. There I go using the word, but I'm reading your thing. Secondary fertility issues. I feel like I don't know the statistics on it, but it makes sense to me that it is more common than primary because of what your body goes through during birth, during postpartum, and how your lifestyle naturally shifts to doing things that are going to impact your fertility in general, right? So for you specifically, you're saying you're struggling with 7 to 10 days of spotting, whereas you used to only have 1 to 3 days of spotting. Spotting in general, whether it's 1 to 3 days, 7 to 10 days, is a sign of low progesterone, right? Obviously, the longer amount of days you have, the bigger the gap is, and then the lower your progesterone is. Progesterone is, yes, the hormone needed to get and stay pregnant. It's the hormone needed for your mood support. It helps support your hair, your skin, your nails, your bones, helps reduce osteoporosis and endometrial cancer and heart disease later in life. But it also, what it actually does is it holds onto your uterine lining, right? So that's why progesterone is so important for pregnancy, because if we don't have sufficient progesterone levels, your body will not be able to hold onto the pregnancy, which is why spotting happens. Right? Estrogen is what's building up that uterine lining. Progesterone is holding on to it. And then right before you get your period, your progesterone drops and then your uterine lining sheds. And that's when you get your period. If you get pregnant, then we hold on to that uterine lining and all the way throughout pregnancy, right? If you are seeing this spotting, that this is a part of it. Could be other things as well, like fibroids, something like that. You can get that checked out. But one of the most common causes, right, is low progesterone. And because you don't have enough to actually hold on to that uterine lining throughout your luteal phase to either get pregnant and or get your period. That's what the spotting is happening. You might also likely have some other PMS symptoms like mood swings, breast tenderness. You could possibly have some headaches, cramps, anything like that. Now, the 7 to 10 days of spotting is definitely more of a red flag for me than 1 to 3. 1 to 3 is also a red flag for me, but 7 to 10 is like a bigger red flag because that's almost the entire duration of your luteal phase. So you might not even be ovulating based off of you spotting for that long. You could definitely be ovulating just having very weak ovulation, but I would definitely want you to be tracking your basal body temperature, especially because you're already a mom and you have 2 kids. For sure would recommend temp drop for this because an oral thermometer is not going to give you accuracy, because in order to get accurate numbers for an oral thermometer when you're tracking your BBT, you need to be waking up at the same time every single morning. You need to have sound sleep throughout the night, no interruptions, which I'm just assuming you're 2 years postpartum, most recently, you have 2 other kids, like that's probably not happening. So I would definitely recommend temp drop if you don't already have it, to see if you actually are ovulating or not, because it's a very long time to be spotting and you could possibly not be ovulating, right? And if you are, you're going to likely see your numbers might be pretty low even after like 3 days if you do ovulate, them dipping down because your progesterone levels are not strong and having strong ovulation, okay? Now, that's not the root cause of the issue though, right? The low progesterone is not the root cause of why you're struggling to get pregnant. It is a symptom of the root cause. The root cause is, well, why are we having this low progesterone? Why are we not having strong ovulation? Like, what is happening? Even if you weren't having this spotting and you were struggling to get pregnant with secondary infertility, I always go back to these 4 major areas. Really, it's the 4 areas, whether it's primary fertility issues or secondary. It's always going to go back to these systems in our body that impact all of our hormones no matter what. But these are especially exacerbated when you become a mom because your life changes, right? So it is very common that you didn't have any issues prior to children, but now you do because your life is different and your hormones are impacted by your daily life choices. So the first and foremost would be your nervous system. So your nervous system is obviously rocked once you have children. Let's just be honest. You have 2 children already. You have a 2-year-old, and then I don't know how old your other one is, but we're talking toddler years, sleeping. Like, your nervous system is being stretched and tested more than ever, like more than it ever has prior to having children, right? And it seemed like you didn't have an issue getting pregnant with a second, amazing, but now you have 2, so your nervous system is now impacted yet again, right? You're juggling 2. So your nervous system is such an integral piece when it comes to getting pregnant, and this is my number one thing that I would always be looking at when it comes to secondary fertility issues is, how is your nervous system? How are you regulating yourself every single day throughout the day? This doesn't mean you need to be doing half an hour meditation every morning. Like, that might not be realistic as a mom of 2. Again, depending on their ages, regardless, right? But how are you regulating yourself throughout the day, and how quickly can you come back to a grounded state when you do get dysregulated, right? Having a regulated nervous system does not mean that you're regulated all the time. That will literally never happen. It means that when you do get dysregulated, your body is able to come back to a state of homeostasis rather in a appropriate amount of time based off of whatever the stressor was, right? So really looking at that, how are you staying regulated during the day-to-day chaos, during morning rush, during toddler tantrums, during work, juggling 2 kids, maybe, whatever it is, right? Just life as a mom. How is your nervous system really? Like, really think about that, because your nervous system and is tightly connected to your progesterone levels as well. It's connected to every single hormone in your body. But when your cortisol is chronically raised up, right, which is a stress hormone, it lowers your progesterone levels as a byproduct, because the higher your cortisol, your body doesn't have an endless amount of cortisol, right? Your adrenals are pumping it out, but eventually they need to use something to keep producing more cortisol if you are constantly being stressed out. and your body uses progesterone to produce more cortisol. So this is likely a major issue for you because you are having that spotting and it seems like you're having low progesterone, where your cortisol levels are likely like you're just producing it over and over and over and over because you're stressed often and maybe you don't have tools and strategies to help regulate yourself. That, and again, I don't know you. I'm just like reading this one blurb and this is what's coming to mind. Okay. So take what makes sense, leave what doesn't. But the more stressed that you are, the lower your progesterone levels are going to be. Okay. Now, there are other things that are stressors on our nervous system, not just the not the actions, the situations and the things that are happening in our day-to-day life. Under-eating is a stress on the nervous system. Under or over-exercising is a stress on the nervous system. Nutrient deficiencies is a stress on the nervous system, right? So there's other things that could be impacting your nervous system, not just mom life. You know what I mean? So that's the first thing I would be looking at and really thinking, okay, how can I help myself be more regulated? How can I have maybe 5 minutes to myself in the morning? And if that, maybe that doesn't mean that you're waking up before the kids, because that sometimes is not reality for me, because my daughter sleeps with me. She'll wake up when I wake up, the whole thing. But how can you maybe set something up in the morning where they could be independent for 5 minutes when you brush your teeth and just ground yourself? Or like think about these little things throughout the day. It's little moments throughout the day. It's not going to be something huge. It's little moments throughout the day of how you can start grounding yourself and regulating yourself and working through things mentally to help support you long term. Really start looking at that. That would be like the number one place I would look. Second thing is, I mentioned before, because it is a stress on the nervous system, is nutrient deficiencies. This is so common postpartum as well, especially if you were breastfeeding, if you didn't continue taking high quality prenatal, B12, vitamin D3. Nutrient deficiencies are so common postpartum. Mineral deficiencies, all of that. And that can vary, like so connected to your ovulation. Because again, you are maybe either not ovulating or not having strong ovulation, and your ovulation needs specific nutrients in order to actually ovulate, right? Your ovaries need specific nutrients in order to ovulate. If you don't have enough in abundant amounts, also maybe you were breastfeeding. Even if you weren't, you could have nutrient deficiencies, but if you were breastfeeding, that could add to it as well. So definitely make sure I have supplements for fertility, pregnancy, and motherhood. It's a program. I'll put the link in the show notes. It's part of the Mind Your Hormones method, which I would definitely recommend for you overall, but I'll get to that in a second. But you could purchase it separately as well. But for sure want you on a postpartum protocol that again is in that program. High quality prenatal, definitely looking at your vitamin D and B12 levels, like omega-3s, like for sure. My 3 favorite prenatals are Needed, Gut Personal, and Fullwell. I'll put the links for all of them in the show notes too. But definitely looking at nutrient deficiencies. You could, of course, get tests done to see what you specifically are deficient in, but you could also take a generalized protocol to really make sure we're building up nutrients that are very common to be low postpartum, which I recently did a podcast episode on that too. So I'll put that link below for you as well. That's the second thing I would look at. Third thing I would look at is your gut health. And again, these are all systems in the body that I'm always talking about. Every single system I'm talking about right now has a separate module with multiple trainings in the Mind Your Hormones method, because whether it's secondary or primary fertility issues or cycle issues in general, PCOS, whatever it is, these are the areas of your body you have to be looking at because they are directly connected to how your cycle is presenting. They're directly connected to your ovulation. They're directly connected to your fertility outcomes, okay? So anyway, gut health changes. Your gut health changes postpartum. With each birth, it changes. This also ties into the nervous system piece. When we're stressed out, especially, postpartum and stuff, we're eating when we're stressed, right? We're eating while wrangling a toddler. We're eating while breastfeeding. We're eating on the go. We're eating in a stressed out state, which when we're eating, we're supposed to be in rest and digest mode, which is our parasympathetic nervous system. But most of the time as parents, we are not even sitting down if we're eating at all. We're eating on the go. We're eating in fight or flight. We're eating in sympathetic nervous system, which is going to create issues with our gut because our gut is not in a space to actually digest when we are eating in a stressed out state. So that's something that definitely impacts our gut health. And your gut health really impacts your estrogen because there's a estrobolome in your gut. It impacts the detoxification of toxins, of metabolic waste, of excess hormones. Hormones will recirculate back into the body if it's not being able to properly come out. So gut health, your gut is also where we absorb certain nutrients. So again, it's all connected. That's why you can't ever just work on one thing. But if your gut is compromised, you might not be able to actually absorb nutrients that you might even be taking, right? You're like, no, Corinne, I got a great supplement protocol. Okay, awesome. If your gut is compromised, you're not going to be able to properly absorb them, right? Leading to these issues. So gut health is definitely another huge issue I would look at as well. Again, there's a whole module of this in the Mind Your Hormones method. You could also go really deep if you know you have a lot of gut issues, like if you're getting rashes or extreme brain fog, or your poops are totally off. Would definitely recommend gut personal stool test for sure. I've done it 4 times. And postpartum, like there's always stuff going on up in there. My code, it is an investment though, by the way. It's like, it is a major investment, but I do have a code that saves you some money off of it, but I'll put that link in the show notes too. Okay. But it's so worth it. It's so worth it. So anyway, gut health changes would be the third thing I would be looking at. And then the fourth thing I'd be looking at is blood sugar regulation. Usually this is always my number one thing because you get the biggest bang for your buck when you do this right away. But specifically when we are talking about postpartum, there's just like a kind of and like secondary fertility issues. It's all related. Really, the order doesn't essentially matter for this. But anyway, blood sugar regulation definitely could be something that's impacting you if you are skipping meals, if maybe you're having more caffeine, if you're going more hours between meals, if you're not pairing your meals properly. This is so common with, secondary fertility issues because a lot of times mom's meals and mom's nutrition will be on the back burner, which I don't recommend because obviously you need to be tip-top shape in order to best take care of your babes. Again, this might not be your situation. I'm just going in blind with what could likely be happening. So regulating your blood sugar, making sure you're eating in the morning, having a high protein, healthy fat, fiber-rich breakfast, not skipping meals, not going longer than 4 hours between meals, not having caffeine on an empty stomach, right? These are things that could be exacerbated secondary fertility issues because these things happen once you become a mom often if you're not careful and if you're not really conscious of doing things differently. So those are the areas that I would look at. I would highly recommend the Mind Your Hormones method. We go through literally every single area I just talked about. We also go through liver support, which is of course important as well, in a strategic order. Super simple, so you know exactly what to do. You don't have time to sift through stuff and to just piece stuff together. You're a mom. You want to be able to open your phone, listen to a training while you're on the go, and know exactly what to do, right? You are obviously motivated. You will do what it takes. You just need an actual roadmap, and that's exactly what the Mind Your Hormones method is. I would highly recommend it. You can use code podcast for 10% off. But those are things I would look at. I'll put the links for everything I talked about in the show notes. And I would definitely recommend the Mind Your Hormones method for this as well to help support you. And if you wanted, obviously, one-on-one support, you can message me and we'll talk about things that we could add on for that too. But that is what likely causes secondary fertility issues. And of course, is the aspect of sperm health as well. We obviously know you do have imbalances though because of so much spotting. So there's for sure areas you need to improve in your body and the systems in your body. But sperm issues can of course be impacted as well just because they were okay for the first 2 births doesn't mean his sperm didn't change also. So just had to note that because 40 to 50% of the time, sperm issues are a contributing factor to fertility issues, and they can also impact miscarriages. So do not want to go without mentioning that. Okay, thank you for asking your question, Rachel. I hope this was helpful for you. I know that it was. Hope to see you inside the Mind Your Hormones method. I'll put everything in the show notes that we talked about. And if you have a question that you want answered on the show, I'll put the link below.
Thank you so much for being here. If you loved this episode and learned something valuable, please share it with a friend who you think would also love it, or post it on social media and tag me so I could personally say thank you for helping me spread this important message. I am beyond grateful to be here with you. So until next time, stay intentional, stay consistent, and always mind your hormones.